Again, I always start it. We never. I don't know. So we moved.
Yay! And we have a spot.
Yeah, it's not just a camera on our table anymore.
I'm just glad we don't have to move everything to film anymore.
Yeah.
It's so nice. And we have a nice little setup spot.
It's cute.
I'm excited about it. And I accidentally just picked up a lot of the Marvel stuff at first. And so then I was just like, I've got to branch out. And so there's like a little picture of Tiny Nicholas and High School Nicholas and High School... There you go. Sammie.
Tiny little Luke.
And then Pops. This is not all of our Pops. It's a ridiculous amount.
They have so many Pops.
It's in this big old box. Yeah, I'm really glad you can't see the rest of this room. Because I'm like that. Anyway, we tried.
So today's video is on communication, because a big question a lot of poly people tend to get asked is like, how do you do it? Like, how do you... And like the answer is you communicate.
I mean, yeah. But like, how do you communicate effectively so that people understand and it's not always just a fight?
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about that. We come from it from a poly perspective. I come from it from also like a mental health counseling and like psychological perspective. And so we're going to figure it all out. Because mental health is stuff.
We're going to dissect it.
A little bit. So effective communication starts with understanding what your problem is. So we're going to talk about specifically in problem-solving situations, how you're going to like portray and convey how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way.
So if you just say, this is how I feel, or you made me feel like this, or something like that, it makes it a lot more difficult to have a conversation if you shut it down afterwards. You want to be open to hearing what the other person has to say about it instead of just going like, you did this to me, you made me feel like this.
It's more likely to start an argument that way too, because you're placing the blame on the other person and you're not taking that initiative to understand your own feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a very common thing that like a term for this would be emotional literacy. Just like regular literacy and like reading things, you're reading your own emotions and other people's emotions.
So basically, a lot of the time, in order to have a healthy conversation about things, you need to understand why you're feeling what you're feeling. Instead of just going, I'm mad, you need to be like, I'm mad because...
of whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm mad about this because...
Yeah. Like, it's... The more explanation you can give, that's my personal way of whenever I get upset about something, I will be very blunt about what upset me. But then I will be open to hearing like the other person and why they're thinking behind what they did and stuff like that. Like you need to be open to more than just, you made me feel bad and now I hate you.
That sounds like a bad start to a conversation. Yes. Need the hammer and stuff. Why? Tiny screws.
Trying to get it away.
This is what happens when you're moving. Hey.
Hi.
Bitch. I gotta readjust our stuff. Our OneNote.
We have to redo the whole system.
Thanks, Nick. It's not as high up as it was. So your feelings aren't necessarily all on the surface. So to take, for example, you think that you're feeling jealous, which you probably are, feeling jealous about, say, your partner's taking someone to like your favorite restaurant, your favorite spot or something like that. Yes, you are jealous about that, but if you just like say, hey, I'm jealous because you did this, just stop doing that. First, that's not a great way to solve problems. And second, it's just going to be triggered by something else unless you actually address the feeling that you're having.
Another example of this could be anger. So when I was in treatment, a big thing that a lot of the counselors were talking about was how anger isn't necessarily a primary emotion. For example, like sadness is caused when something makes you sad, but anger is typically caused by, like, not something making you mad. I don't know how to explain this. Like, some people, when they get sad, they become angry instead. Like, a lot of the times, anger can stem from jealousy or sadness or something else like that, instead of, I'm just mad for no reason. There's typically a reason, and that reason stems from another reason. I can't explain it.
So, I think what Cale is trying to say is that emotions might cause things to manifest as anger. So, like, your unaddressed, like, sadness or jealousy or frustration with, like, certain pressure or just, like, general anxiety can manifest as anger if not, like, properly handled and mitigated. Is that what you were trying to do?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, we did it.
I used to struggle with that so much. Like, before I learned proper communication skills, every emotion went back to anger for me. And I would just yell at people and just get angry for no reason.
That's how you push people away.
Yeah. But I then learned, like, how to properly communicate how I was feeling and, like, why I felt the way I did instead of just being, like, mad all the time. And it helped.
Yeah, so when you discover there's an issue, like you're feeling a certain emotion, take a minute to, like, analyze where that's coming from, what you think could have triggered that emotion, so that way when you bring it to the other person, you can be like, Cale, I'm feeling sad, and this is why. It was triggered by whatever. What are sad things?
Yes, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, but it's a lot easier when it's going, I'm feeling blank, and this is why, instead of going, you made me feel bad, or I feel bad because you. By placing the blame on other people, it makes it less of a conversation and more of an accusation.
Yes.
And it makes it a lot... The other person's going to go into defensive mode, basically. Yes. They're going to get very defensive, and it makes it a lot harder. It's more likely to turn into an argument.
Than it is to, like, actually be a productive conversation. Honesty! Yay! So, of course, everyone knows that honesty and truthfulness are a major component of a relationship, especially a poly relationship. But to be honest with your partner or whoever you're having a relationship with, you also have to be honest with yourself. You have to acknowledge, like, the situation you're in and the reality of who you are as well.
So a big issue can be ignoring your problems or not being honest with yourself when something's bothering you.
Right.
Like, for example, if you feel ashamed or guilty that something is bothering you and you try to, like, hide it or push it away so that you feel, like, less bad about it, it'll just build up.
Yeah, that
does not work that well.
We speak from experience.
Yeah, basically just let yourself feel how you feel and be honest with yourself about it. Be like, I feel angry. I feel jealous. Like, something like that. You just have to be completely honest with yourself.
Yeah, like, so when people, for example, like, when someone, say, like, they're estranged from a parent, and then the parent passes away, and so they have this, like, weird feeling of, like, yeah, this parent did a lot to me, but I still also lost a parent. So, like, there's these weird feelings, and you might feel guilty about those feelings, and not wanting to, like, recognize that, oh, it's a sense of relief or something like that. But you have to recognize those feelings, or else it's just going to pent up, and you're just going to feel more and more guilty about it.
Exactly.
Yes.
There's an idea out there that lying is the exact opposite of honesty, while that isn't necessarily completely true. Lying is when you're trying to be purposefully and consciously deceitful or misleading. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not telling the truth. You could be telling the truth, but in a very misleading way, or with the purpose to mislead someone else's opinion.
Right. So a lot of, like, people that lie on the regular, they aren't necessarily not telling the truth in that sentence. A lot of good liars, they actually use the truth a lot in just a misleading way. Say, for example, you ask your partner, hey, have you been cheating on me? Because you have a suspicion they've been cheating on you. And turns out they are cheating on you with someone that they work with, and they say, oh, I've been at the office all day. That doesn't necessarily answer the question. It sounds like they are, but if they're cheating on somebody with at work,
Yeah, they're not.
it's not
a lie.
It's not a lie because they were at work.
So lying and honesty don't have as direct a correlation as people normally associate with them.
Right. Because lying doesn't mean just not true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you've figured out what you're feeling. You figured out why you're feeling it. That's pretty much all you need, right?
No. The big point of having a conversation is that your partner or whoever you're talking to also has to understand what you mean. So, I'm communicating. Why wouldn't they understand?
Basically, everyone has a different perspective on life, and every situation is viewed differently through every person's eyes. So, what happened to you might not be exactly what happened to them or how they took what happened.
Yeah. So, basically, people have ways of conceptualizing conversations and conceptualizing things around them that are different based on like how they were raised or how they were taught to communicate or this kind of thing. People learn how to process emotions differently. Like you hear about toxic masculinity a lot. Boys are raised from a young age to not process emotions very well just because they have to be strong and tough and they can't cry and blah, blah, blah. And girls are always assumed to be over-emotional. We're moving.
Yeah, it's going to be a little noises.
Someone's hammering something into the wall. I blame Nicholas.
It's probably Nicholas.
I blame him. Even in the exact same situation, people may not feel the same way about it. So two people could experience the exact same trauma and process it completely differently.
So you can't expect the person that you're talking to react the exact same way that you would have in that situation.
Right, and so like, if you're telling someone something, you can't assume that they would feel the exact same way in your situation either. So it just depends on how they might not react the same way. They might not feel like, oh, this was a big deal to me, but yeah.
Yeah, for example, if something that wouldn't upset someone else upsets you, you still have that right to be upset about it, and vice versa. If someone is upset by something you did when you didn't mean for it, or you wouldn't have been upset by it, they're still upset, and that's a valid thing that they're feeling, and you need to be able to understand that.
Yeah, you have to you also have to make them understand where you're coming from. Like, oh, this is why this made me feel this way. Explain the whole situation. Don't be just like, I don't understand why you don't feel the same way I do.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't, that's not going to work the way you want it to. Don't rely on other people to communicate for you. So, Cale and I are having an argument.
Yeah,
we're mad about it.
So mad.
But we don't want to tell each other about it. So we're going to tell anyone else about it and have them communicate that message.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we're only slightly frustrated or super pissed might get lost depending on how we communicate to that person to tell the other person.
Especially over text.
Oh my gosh.
Things over text can get twisted so easily. Like, some people will put periods at the end of things, and
some people will put ellipses that stress me out.
Some people do ... all the time, and you never know what that means, Luke.
They didn't hear us. I wanted them to.
Oh?
Don't you talk about
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it stresses me out.
Everyone has a different way of texting and will tend to interpret other people's texts how they personally would mean it, where you have to like think about, oh, this is how they meant it. So things like sarcasm and like frustration and all that kind of stuff can get lost so easily. So it's better to always communicate face to face if that's a possibility.
People are going to put their interpretation on things. Even if we were having a conversation face to face, say I'm having an issue with somebody and Cale goes and tells them about the issue, they might play it down, they might build it up. And then that's how things get either blown out of proportion or any variety of misunderstanding can happen. So it's better just to communicate directly with the person you're having an issue with.
Yes, as hard as it might be.
It sucks. All the time.
Yeah. Well, not all the time.
Not most of the time.
I like having talks with people. I like having serious conversations with people. That's how I feel close to everyone.
But it doesn't necessarily mean, like, I have an issue with this. Right?
No, not always. It's more of like, if I get upset, I will make it very clear as to why I'm upset and exactly what caused it. And a lot of the times, like, I know that I'm reacting inappropriately or something. So if I'm like, sometimes I am. We as people are prone to blow things out of proportion.
Yeah, or minimize things.
It's usually one end of the spectrum where you're either like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
You constantly say that. When we're playing Mario Kart, he's like, this is the worst day of my life.
So for example, I do have a tendency to overreact.
It can be fun.
I do overreact, and a lot of my conversations will start with me going, look, I know how I'm reacting isn't completely rational, but this is why I'm reacting like this.
Right.
And then that's up to the other person to understand, okay, he knows that this isn't the correct reaction.
Right.
And he's aware of that, but he's at least explaining why he's reacting like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of like, it comes from both sides where you have to really be willing to listen and understand and be empathetic with the other person.
Right. Whereas I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I just hide everything. I'm like, oh yeah, this will pass. It's not worth bothering
people like
about.
that are so frustrating to me.
Because fuck you too.
It's so frustrating because I talk about everything.
Well, I feel bad about putting things on other people because I'm not allowed to do that. So
I totally get that. I used to be the exact same way, but treatment, like,
I didn't get helpful treatment.
I got.
So a lot of times in an argument, especially like in movies and stuff, you'll see people like slamming doors, and when you're a teenager, your parents are like, "Don't slam the door," and then you do. And then they get all mad.
You know how parents are.
Parents, I don't know. But, so, actually, slamming doors isn't actually helpful.
Believe it or not.
Yeah, so whether you're talking about figurative or literal doors, usually the slamming of a door means the end of a conversation. That means I'm mad, I don't want to talk about it, I'm done. Where you probably shouldn't do that. You should probably keep going with those feelings, because obviously you didn't get your point across and you're pissed about it.
There's the saying, never go to bed angry, which means basically just don't
let it sit.
Yeah, don't leave things in a bad place when you could continue talking about it. Obviously, if you need to walk away from a situation,
take a breather,
take a break, like, obviously do that. Or else it can escalate things more.
Yes.
But to the best of your ability, try not to end a conversation when you do that. Say, for example, you'd want to be like, I can't talk right now. We can continue this later. Instead of going, I can't talk to you about this.
Right. Very different things. One saying you want to continue the conversation, where the other's like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's not worth talking about. Whereas it probably is if you got that mad.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Don't use ultimatums. Everyone hates an ultimatum, because that makes it seem like you have this choice or you have this choice. Neither of them seem like good options. Of course, ultimatums can be super necessary in situations that are like to that point where it's this way or the end of the relationship. For like an example, like severe alcohol or drug abuse type things, you can always be like, you have to stop this or I can't be with you type thing, because that's for your own safety. That's different.
Yeah, if it's something that's like impacting your health,
right,
and happiness, then that's different.
Whereas like if you're like, you find out that your partner's talking to their ex, you're like, yeah, you can't talk to them anymore or else we're done.
That's not great. It's a little iffy.
It's a little bit of a problem. Just because it puts a lot of tension on that one subject, and it's not helpful.
And it can get to the point where the person that you're putting the ultimatum on, they'll make that decision. If they make the decision you want them to make, they could end up resenting you for it.
Right.
And just building that up, and then just be mad at you in the future for making them pick. Yeah.
Even if it's something simple, it could just build up, especially if you use it on the regular.
Yes.
You don't want to do that. Everyone hates them. It's awful.
Going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, you have to remember that your way isn't the only right way. Right. And everyone interprets things differently. So just because you interpreted something a specific way it doesn't mean that's the only way it could have been interpreted.
Right. Okay. So now there's something that I want to talk about called the blue fish tuba effect, which Cale looked at it and was like, what?
No idea what that is.
Exactly. Okay, so okay. So blue fish tuba. All three of those have a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
In separate contexts, you'd be fine. Like, that's a blue shirt. Cool. That tuba's big, whatever. So blue fish tuba doesn't make any sense in this context. So think about your frame of mind versus another person's. Because you didn't have the context that is my background, whatever, that I've researched this, you didn't understand when I said the blue fish tuba effect. But to me, it made total sense when I said it to you. The thing is, you have to consider the other person, like, how they conceptualize and how they think about things.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it might end up sounding like nonsense if you're just like, so for example, when you tell monogamous people, especially like conservative monogamous people, that I'm in a polyamorous relationship, people are like, what's that mean? I'm like, I can date whoever I want, more or less. Yeah. The simplest version. Like, I can date multiple people at the same time. They're like, what? You break them. Because they don't understand that concept. You're challenging their way of thinking to the point where they're just like, you can't do that. That's not right.
You might as well be stringing random words together to that.
Exactly! That's exactly the point. You got it.
I
We're
got
doing
it.
Great.
So you've started a conversation and you've said your piece, but there's a little bit more you have to do. You have to listen to the other person.
Yeah, we're just through the first part of like, oh yeah, here's my problem.
Yeah.
That's all we're at. So there's active listening, there's passive listening. Of course, people think like, when they think active listening, it's like, yeah, nodding along. So that's, I guess, that is part of it, yes, but you also have to be listening. You have to understand their point. So if, like, say we're having a discussion and you're sitting here just thinking about what you're going to respond because you're so focused on, like, your point that you're not paying attention to my point as well,
mm-hmm.
and not actually taking part in the conversation, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Active listening is more letting yourself really listen and understand what the other person's trying to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just like going like, yeah, like brushing it off. It's more of like understanding and listening.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like, but this is what I'm actually
mm-hmm.
saying. But that's not what they're trying to do. You have to understand what they're saying. They have to understand what you're saying. A common skill that I'm in a skills class for counseling, and a thing that we do is reflection of meaning and a reflection of feeling. And so it would be like, you told me that you're sad when certain things happen. And I'll be like, oh, well, it feels like you are upset that this happened to you, or when this happens type thing. Or, so it sounds like you mean, continue on.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to understand, and also, like, paraphrasing. Like, you repeat back, like, hey, did I actually understand this right?
Yes, that's a very good point. If there's something that was said that could be taken a couple different ways and you don't know which way it is,
mm-hmm.
ask. Do not just assume that it's the worst way possible that they meant it.
Exactly.
Because they could have meant it a completely, like, different way.
Yeah, that's what a reflection of meaning is kind of like. Because
yes.
you're, like, reflecting back what you interpreted from it, and they'll be like, no, but that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Also, you also have open-ended questions versus closed questions. Open-ended questions would be like, how was your day? Versus, did you have a good, or like, was your day okay? And they'll be like, yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of you actually telling me how your day actually was.
Yeah.
That'll continue on the conversations where yes or no answers or one-word answers in general can just kind of like feel like a hard stop.
Mm-hmm. Another big idea with conversations is you need to be conscious as to how you make the other person feel, because they're not going to remember word for word everything you say, but they will remember how the things you said made them feel. So if you say something in the heat of the moment that makes them feel bad, they're going to take it as a bad conversation. Instead of if you say, hey, like, this made me feel like this because of this, and, like, tell them and, like, have a real talk with them about it where it's healthy and it feels like it's moving in a positive direction, then they're going to remember it as a more positive conversation.
Yeah, so think more on a larger scale, don't remember. We're not going to remember what you say word for word, unless you say something like really profound, and then maybe still not. Think about the overall concept. What is the overall concept that you want them to stick with, or like? So that's why these direct things of, I feel like this because of this, that, and whatever, and here's how I feel like we could change that. That's how you should come into a conversation.
Yep.
So a lot of conversations, a lot of people are like, hey, I am listening to this person. They're not listening to me. Realistically, they're going to say the same thing about you. As long as you follow the steps of like actually trying to understand the point that's coming across instead of focusing on your own stuff or all the other things that we've listed, as long as you're trying to understand and like actually conveying that you're listening to them, you shouldn't have this problem. Because honestly, people just want to be heard. And when people don't feel heard, they get upset. And then you're not going to understand why, because you thought you were listening, but they don't see it as that way because you're not actively listening.
Yeah, and there are also different ways that people listen. You know, like, not everyone listens the same way, if that makes sense. Like, some people need to be written to. Some people need to be talked to. Like,
some people can't listen when they're not focusing on other things.
Yeah, some people, like, everyone absorbs information differently. So you have to be able and willing to, like, bend a little bit if someone needs you to say things a different way to them for them to actually get it, and they should be willing to do that for you.
Yeah, I think learning styles. So a lot of people are like
tactile.
Audio. Tactile and audio and visual. It's the same kind of thing. You have to figure out the best way to that person understands things, and then you move on. If the person that you're talking to isn't like, doesn't seem engaged, they don't seem like they want to talk, or they're just like very quiet and it feels like they're processing, you might need to prompt them. Be like, hey, what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's a big technique that I use when people get upset and I notice that they are kind of closing off to me or they don't really feel like talking about something. I'll be like, hey, what are you thinking? And just try to not pry it out of them because I want to give them their space, but make it more of their choice to talk to me about it if they want to. And just kind of give them that option where it's like, hey, I'm here to listen, but if you don't want to talk, then I'm not going to pressure you.
Right. You're opening the conversation, and if they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about it right now, they have the choice to make. They have that choice to make. So these are some of the basic steps and ideas and tips and tricks and stuff that we have for you for communication. Of course, there are other things that we could have talked about. We could have made this way too long for any of us to edit.
These are just little things that, like, we learned from personal experience growing up and that we were taught from our parents and, like, shit like that. Yeah, not taught from our parents. There's just...
Because no one teaches you how to talk to other people.
Yeah. And
they don't teach you how to, like, correctly portray your emotion or, like, portray your emotions in a way that's going to be receivable to other people.
Yeah, you aren't raised with, like, this is how you talk to people. Like, it's all things that you pick up throughout your life.
And they may be good or they may be bad habits. You just have to find out when they don't work.
Yeah.
Or they do. So, yeah.
It varies person to person what works and what doesn't.
And of course, different cultures have different ways of, like, communicating and different things like that, but that's a whole other thing.
Yep.
It's so complicated. I hope this was actually helpful. We tried. If you like this video, please like. Please like the button.
Yeah.
Subscribe if you want more information in the future about whatever, or just see us do whatever we want to do. It depends on the week.
Yeah, honestly. It depends on how we're feeling. Like, you get what you get.
Honestly, we're trying. Did you want to call out somebody from Rocky?
Kayla. Okay. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yee.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.